Okay, hello everyone. So today the topic of our lecture is GMOs and its relationship with health and the psychological and legal issues that are related with the GMOs. So the learning objectives of the today's lecture is about how we define GMOs and how we evaluate the scientific evidence on health and safety, and then analyzing the psychological factors that shape public perception of GMOs, and identifying key legal and regulatory frameworks governing GMO approvals and labeling and trade, and applying ethical frameworks to contested GMO policies. So, what are GMOs? GMOs are genetically modified organisms, and it can be in any organism where in which we actually modify their genome. So, using the recombinant DNA technology, gene editing, or similar related biotechnological methods. So, in this way, we aim to produce a modified organism which can actually cater to our needs or our overall research objectives or societal objectives. So, there are a spectrum of techniques that are available in the market. For example, previously, people has been traditionally using a recombinant DNA technology, where we are inserting some foreign gene some into some gene into some genome. Sorry, using either agrobacterium or gene gun, and maize and soya are examples of this kind of GMOs. Then we have RNA interferences, where actually we silence specific genes using dsRNA. Then there is CRISPR-Cas9, which is actually where we actually precisely cut and edit in native genomes. Tomatoes and wheat, drought-tolerant wheats are examples of such GMOs. Then there are cisgenesis, where we insert genes from the same species only. It is it has been implemented to produce GMOs in potato crops. Then we have gene drive, where we actually spread modification to wide populations. And so scale of so what is the scale of GMOs globally if we talk about in terms of revenues? So actually, um, uh, today a large number of crops which are sold or used by farmers all over the world are mostly GMOs, and almost 206 million hectares of these crops are being sold every year. Um, so soybean, maize, and cotton, canola, they are the main crops that we are seeing, especially canola crops are being majorly used for or producing vegetable-based oils, likewise soybean as well. Leading countries which are been using these GMOs are USA, Brazil, Canada, India, and so normally over 90% of GMOs adoption is in four traits, whether they are either they are herbicide tolerant, insect resistant, or drought tolerant, and this is because due to changing climate changes we are facing right now. Um, so what is the scientific consensus? Is there any rules or regulation or body across the world that actually have some standing over the GMO? So, for example, WHO, World Health Organization, its position is that no effects on human health has been demonstrated yet as of consuming a GMO food. So they have no problem with that. But National academies of science, and so they have reviewed and very thorough reviewed, and they also found that there is no substantial evidence of risk. European Commission also has the same similar findings, similar to American Medical Association and top Nobel laureates as well. So, when we talk about specific health concerns, which is not proven normally by the top agencies. So, for example, There can be allergens. It can be toxic, and there can be horizontal gene transfer. For example, when we're concerned about allergens, so it varies from case to case. And in Brazil, nut gene in soybean, um, it was abandoned after we detected that it has some kind of allergen in it. Then there's the factor of toxicity, and toxicity. There is actually no evidence by any known organization that there is some toxin available produced in the food produced by GMO. Um, Similarly, there are epigenetic effects. Some studies have raised the question that there is a heritable silencing, and so this is in the literature right now. This is not proven yet. And similarly, herbicide residues can be there. For example, glyphosate controversy in 2015. They say that this is maybe the probably the cause of carcinogen, cancer causing, and although EPA and EFSA disagree with that carcinogenic activity. So there are some is a published work related to GMOs, and especially uh, Seralini, where Seralini actually he the author actually published the photographs or tumor laden rats, and they were fed around Roundup ready maize in food and chemical toxicology, triggering global media panic. So this is the experiment conducted by this particular scientist, and he found out that if we feed a particular maize, which was a GMO, and to a rat, so it led to the tumor. So, but it was not supported later on by some backed up by reliable data. Health benefits can be that we have golden rice, so they are biofortified with beta carotene, and it could lead to reduced vitamin A deficiency in all over the globe. We can have omega-3 enriched crops, and we can have um, reduced acrylamide in potatoes, especially reduce mycotoxin contamination. This is in BT crops, and we can also remove emergence from the food. For example, people having nut allergies, so allergenic proteins can in peanut sweets, and so it can be removed after knocking out their genes. So, are there any psychological issues related to GMOs, especially risk perception, attitudes, and behavior when it comes to psychology? So, GMOs normally are associated. There are some studies that they investigated that their GMOs can be associated with, maybe associated with their psychological issues as well. Um, and there is a study in 2019 in Nature, and they found that people who are most opposed to GM foods are also the most overconfident about their knowledge of genetics and food science. So it is maybe a behavioral thing, not the actual fact that people are opposing GMOs. Um, so, what are actually the um, factors that are shaping the risk perception that people are perceiving the GMOs as risk? So, these factors are naturalness, heuristics. For example, people think that naturally safe and artificially is risky. So GMOs can because they are produced in the lab, so they are they are artificially produced, and they can be risky to human health as well. But this is just a perception. Then there is a affect heuristics. So emotional reactions is that people um, think that this is disgusting to have something artificially produced, and so it proceeds and override analytical reasoning about this. And then there modern intuition. So crossing species boundaries triggers um, another kind of objection that when we actually transfer genes from one species to another species, it is considered as immoral. That ability of uh, of highlighting trait of one species is manifested in by other species without considering that whether it can be uh, how uh, will turn out in the long term environmental changes. Trust in institutions as is it is also low in regulatory agencies. Normally, they are known to be government agencies, so they have low trust um, in the eyes of the public. Then there is a cultural recognition. People interpret um, evidence through the lens of their cultural worldview. And there is media framing as well. And media makes a um, you can say narrative. They build a narrative about the negative narrative about the GMOs, negative impact, which can also be actually media carry the capacity to actually determine the which risks are worth receiving attention or not. There is also a discussion over cross-cultural variation in attitudes. For example, in USA, people general attitude is that 50% population is comfortable with consuming GMOs because of the trust in agencies and FDA. In Europe, 70% of the people are naturalists. They are opposed to GMO cultivation, and people are very precautionary in nature. But in African countries, people have mixed, very increasing acceptance of food for a GMO food-based food, and this is because of the poverty and great deal of hunger. China, India, government is supportive because of the huge population. So state that technology narratives actually they actually try to build positive narrative towards the GMO food. And so, like BT cotton is widely accepted in India, and farmer activism was there, and so they actually they have empowered the farmers to that have more and more production from the same field of land of crop actually, and this had led to the great production or acceptance on the public level from in China and India. Um, when we talk about the role of disgust and contamination heuristic, disgust is the powerful and evolutionary ancient emotion that signals contamination risk from pathogens, toxins, or and category violations. GMO opponents actually they argue that contamination means pollution, freaking food, playing God. So whoever is opposing a GMOs is of the view that it is against the nature, and it is not it is man-made, and it is artificially made. So we are actually going against maybe God, or maybe it is a Frankenstein in the terms of food. So this is the actually this gives the idea of disgust to the GMOs. So people are motivated and when they are actually reasoning about GMOs, um, but it normally backfires when a certain case happens. Um, although there are many environmental agencies and seed protection agencies that are present in normally agriculture rich lands or countries, but people actually they selectively seek, interpret, and recall information. So this is the reason that it backfires. So legal and regulatory issues. Um, so here is a comparison of different countries and what are regulatory approaches in these countries. For example, in USA, we they have product-based um, regulatory approach, and they evaluate the product, not the process. So in Europe, they have process-based approach. So GM, because the process is that you have to alter the genetics of the genomics of the crop. Um, so that is why they actually are more of like a precautionary uh, principle people. So in China, it is hybrid project, state-controlled approvals are there. So the permits for researchers are very restrictive, and there is a very commercial cultivation is also very restrict. In Brazil and South Asia, like Pakistan, India, developing countries, and frameworks are still developing, and the approval is by case to case. And there are many organizations that they are actually key bodies, especially NIPG, NIAB, and PAC, and there are no mandatory labeling currently in force. When we talk about the intellectual property and patent law, so GMO actually, apart from legal issues and ethical issues, there is also IPO issues related to. So plant variety protection is also there. It is very difficult to protect the traditional or naturally existing variety in a region, and there is no proper documentation to save those from getting extinct. So utility patents can cover DNA sequences, traits, and breeding methods. Um, this can be useful to organization where research is going on, but for common farmer, it is not the case. For example, Monsanto Supreme Court held that using patented gene to natural cross pollination still constitutes infringement. So these are different examples from all around the world that patent law is well versed in the USA, in Europe, but not in other parts of the world. And so international trade law is also very important with respect to GMOs. So World Trade Organization, WTO agreements on SPS. They provide the sanitary measures that must be based on scientific risk assessment, and it cannot be used as disguised trade barriers. So there is also a legal framework with the name of Codex. Um, and then there is a protocol on biosafety, Cartagena, and this is very popular. And then there is TRIPS agreement, WTO. Then there are labeling controversies as well, consumer rights arguments that consumers have right to know. So the food must be labeled that they are GMO, they are based on GMOs or non-GMOs. So industry argument is that mandatory labeling implies risk where none is established. And in USA 2022 and NBFDS controversy, electronic QR code disclosure criticized as discriminating against rural, elderly, and low-income consumers without smartphones. So people have said, so what people have used that QR codes, where most of people are unfamiliar with the how to scan the QR code, especially low-income and elderly or rural people. So companies and big tech companies actually they fulfill the requirement of like okay we have completed the requirement of labeling the food, but actually they didn't. Um, so Then we can discuss about ethical synthesis, where we have competing values in GMO debates. Key value conflicts. What is the value or position, and what are pro GMO and anti GMO arguments are? For example, from the safety and precautionary principles point of view, pro GMOs argue that the extensive risk assessment establishes safety, and it blocks proven technology, causes harm through inaction. But anti-GMO argument is that unknown long-term effects justify caution. So burden of proof on developers or not regulators. Similarly, food sovereignty and corporate power. So pro GMS is that technology is neutral, so benefits depends on governance and access mechanisms. But anti-GMOs say that corporate seed monopolies threatens farmer autonomy. Similarly, environmental justice say that GM crops can reduce pesticide use, which is good. But anti-GMOs say that gene flow to wild relative so superweeds and the loss of biodiversity. So loss of biodiversity is very important. That if every crop, every organism is resistant to disease microbes or herbs, so then it will become that they maybe have become the super weeds or super crops. Um, um, so animal and ecological welfare point of view, targeted insects, insect resistant reduces the broad spectrum insecticide, but BT crops reduce prey species for birds, and beneficial insects are also there. So when there is only GMO based crop, then we are also reducing the biodiversity of the entire ecosystem. Then intergenerational ethics are also there, and knowledge and epistemic justice. Peer-reviewed science should guide policy, but there are only marginalized communities have legitimate epistemological concerns beyond published evidence. So these were the comparison of conflicts of pro-GMO and anti-GMO on the different aspects or issues. So we can apply ethical frameworks. For example, it is utilitarian. For example, we are seeing about aggregate benefits that we are gaining genes, we are getting nutrition, and we are reducing pesticide. So overall, our utility is increasing. So there is an aggregate benefit. Similarly, we have aggregate harm as well. Um, More corporate concentration is there on the GMO crops, and ecological risk is also there. And then there is a deontological or a Kantian framework that focuses on duties and full informed consent for consumers and respect for farmers' autonomy. Then virtue ethics that asks what kind of food system reflect our values as a society. Then care ethics are also there, which centers the relationships and context. Then there are environmental ethics, which non-anthropocentric views assign intrinsic value to species and ecosystems. So these are the key terms that we have chosen in the dialecture, and these are the for the further readings. Thank you.